Right after I stopped recording the last video, I kind of realized what the problem was. So we were trying to get functions to work with this new structure, and we had introduced some bugs. If we run the tests, we'll see that we have two failures, and the reason is that when we are running the function, we forgot to create a new environment. Before when we made this with env, or before we didn't use this, before we used for anonymous function or whatever. And actually we need to do something like that, because every time you call a function you need to make a new environment, which is kind of interesting. So actually let me see here. So I believe, no, it's still just called environment. But in fact, you could argue that this should be called the parent environment, because we need to create another internal environment that is not equal to this, but like a new environment. So I actually want to call it parent environment. And with that we can go to run works function, and let's call this the function environment. And actually, yeah, it will have to be mutable. And what it's going to be is the parent environment of this guy, and then we enclose it. And then we don't want to put things into the environment. We rather want to put them into the environment used for this function. And we don't want to use it here, the parent environment. We want to use this environment. And I see we still have some problems here from the renaming. And okay, because we use this inner mutability, of course it doesn't have to be mutable. So let's run the tests again. And we still have failure, which is interesting, but at least we have one less failure, so that's progress. And it just fails with something has not been defined. So let's have a look. And what's the saying? Variable I has not been declared at distance, and then nothing, which is, but anyway. So it's here. We should really improve this. But there's no way to get the distance anymore because it is wrapped in the environment. The deep clone, I don't want to use that. That should not have been a thing. We don't think we can access the locals because, you know what, let me just expose this. So we get, yeah, let's say we get an ID and we return an option of usize. Let me try to use the exactly. And now it's saying that it's not used, but we will use it here. Environment, that get distance, that thing. Let's run the test again. And we need this formatter. Wait, so strict. Okay, I has not been declared at distance 1, which is weird because if we look at this, it should be at distance 1. Right, because it has this environment here that should keep it. So until I get a debugger installed, let us just debug print. No. It's so very strange that this. Okay, interesting. So it seems like when we run the make counter, we don't define, yeah. So for some reason the argument values are, no, but that's fine. But this, okay, we need to check that statement. So let's say evaluating statement, and then can we debug print it? That's not very nice. Anyway, evaluating statement, variable something, I initialize as 0. Perhaps this is the ID. And then there's a function statement, a return statement, and then we run the function again. Let me check the enclose function. The values is empty. That should be the case. Locals is cloned, which is fine. And then we have a reference to self-cloned. Which is also fine. So that seems correct. Let's get rid of this because it's a bit confusing. let's see what's inside the environment. Okay, we cannot do that. So let's say that was not my intention. Let's say for our value, let me try something. Let me say look over keys and values in the front end and print them. Okay, so you cannot do that. Actually, there is a method called iter, but I guess the problem is that the values is like this ref cell thing, so we need to first borrow it. And this will probably not be enough because we only print the outermost values, but let's just try this. So that's fine because it should be empty. But let's try to run it over the enclosing. So it's an option, so we just unwrap it and then we need the values of that. And okay, whatever. Still not. Let me do this instead. Just so there's no confusion about what's happening. And this is of course an environment, so we need to look at the values. And there's nothing in there. Even and this should, yeah, it should happen when we This is very bizarre. So it's correct that there's no environment when we run make counter, but when we run count, there should be a parent environment with something inside it. So why is that not the case? So we have a bunch of statements here and one. And what does the interpreter do when we hit a variable statement? It runs the initializer and then defines it on the environment. and that one just inserts it into the values. So what if we interpret things and then we always just for key value in interpreter dot environments dot values, just print those. Yeah, so first we declare the variable. So maybe I include this here for reference. So first we are here, we make a counter. Then we're in this function, we run this one, we get one thing in the environment. Then we run this thing and we get two things. Let me do something like put a couple of those. Okay, so we run the function, we have one KBP, then we define the inner function. We get two things. We get the function and we get the I value. Then we run the return statement, we still only have two things. Then we go to this one, we run this thing. So same deal. But then the parent environment is empty when we then run the function. So it's probably a mistake in here, I guess. We have a function statement. Which just calls make function, then it wraps it in the callable type and then defines that. So here potentially something is going wrong. Because we're enclosing it, and that shouldn't be the case anymore. So let's just run this test now. So it seems like it ran, and let's remove all these print statements. Let's run cargo test. Oh wow. So that caused like a ton of failures now. This is strange, but let's go back here and just verify that this is correct. So when we make a function, we want to save the parent environment. Probably I bet I made a mistake up here. No, parent environment is the clone of the current environment. This is weird. Well, let's class with return method. Let's see what's actually failing. So let me run the tests and then look for failed ones. Let's start with a simple one. So variable fn has not been declared at distance 3. Right. Wonder why it thinks it's distance 3. But it looks like there's some problem now with how things are defined, or how they are resolved rather. When I see what went wrong. I accidentally deleted the code to actually define the variables. Let's try again. Yes, very nice. Very, very nice. Now I just have a question why it doesn't print things out if everything passes. Probably because it's printed like that. So if I do this, then it will give the full. A full report. Okay. But great. So it was essentially just that that we need to remember to define an environment, make a new environment each time we call a function. And then additionally that this code here had to be correct. Okay, but I think we can now look at this keyword a little bit. So here we are. I think we already did some stuff in the resolver. Let me... So we already resolve this. Let's just check it that the class statement is also correct. We begin the scope. We do some ungodly unwrapping. And then we define this, or we resolve this, or whatever. And then we declare all the methods okay. So the resolver has a new scope, so the interpreter needs to create a corresponding environment. At runtime, we create the environment after we find the method and the instance. Yeah, okay. So we need to go to the getter. This one. And then we, if we're trying to get a method, first it looks for a field, then it looks for a method. We get the method, and we need to now modify the environment. So let's say new env is the callable dot but here is a problem. that it can be a general callable, but actually, since it's a class, it can only be a logs function, so we can delete this and just do that. And then down here, it's now possible for us to say parent environment dot enclose, and on that we define yes, that exactly. And then I want to set the parent environment to this, I think. Now we have to wrap this in a callable implementation, or a logs function. I'm just gonna say use callable. Okay. So I think that is correct. So when we're getting a method, we find that method. First we just clone it for convenience. Then we define a new environment. Similar to how we define a new scope, we define a new environment. And then in that environment we put this. Then we make that the new parent environment. And then we return a function, a callable. So I think that's correct. And this is this call to bind, which is basically this thing, I guess. So yes, we wrap the environment, then we define this, and then we return a new function. Exactly what we're doing. And there isn't much to it. We create a new environment. And bind it to okay, this expressions so we need to handle that. We had to do here. And it says lookup variable. But I guess it is something like this, except we don't have a get at. But I think because we don't I'm a little bit unsure whether this will work. Let me check the get. It takes the name and then the ID. So and does it actually take, so it's just a string reference, so we can just do that, and then the ID. And it is indeed an option. So we have to kind of expect it. Couldn't look up this. let's see if that works by writing a test. I call it this method. And we'll make something called the greeter, classic example. And it has a greet method which just prints hello this.name. Then we will make an instance. We will instantiate the name to be Steve, and then we will call greet. And the output should just be hello Steve. Let's try to run it. Right, so the methods here, methods map, we're inserting functions, but actually this one is also returning a callable implementation, which is, it's not really necessary. Let's return a logs function implementation. And then we're going to remove this. I think we will need that because now this one has to be wrapped in a callable implement. It has to be wrapped in this one. Let's try to run that. Something here. Value is partially moved all of a sudden. That is not good. Why is it saying that? What is an instance? It has just a literal value. Ref cell. Okay. I wonder if we have to clone, and also I wonder why I didn't complain about this before. Now let's try to run it. And it actually worked. The only complaint I have is this. That's pretty crazy. That was pretty easy. So let's make another one that we will call this fails. And actually, let me just clone this and put it there. So now we don't set anything. Now it should yield an error, and it's can never I never know what exactly the error message is, but let's just do this. So maybe I should handle that in a smarter way. It's actually panicking. Maybe it shouldn't panic. Let's go to this guy. Evaluate is returning a result. So let's go to where it's panicking. That's too many of that, so it's line 742. Evaluating functions is no field named. Name on this instance. Also returning a result here. So let's do this, and let's call it and exactly. Now let's try to run that one again. Error, no field named name on this instance. Field named name on this instance. Now if we run the tests, should still pass, and it does. Okay, I think that's it for this video. Cleaned up the function implementation, and we implemented this keyword. In the next video, I guess we will have like a better error handling for this outside of a method. So see you in the next one.